Hi, I'm Diane Mooney. I'm with the Etowah Valley Historical Society, EVHS. We're in Cartersville, Georgia. Today we are visiting the Vaughn Cabin at Red Top Mountain State Park. This project has been in place for many years now, but we're going to give you a fantastic little update today, show you how it looks at Christmas, some of the different time spans and different uses they have of the cottage here. I'm going to turn it over in just a second to Guy Parmenter because he was extremely instrumental in getting this cabin to happen on Red Top Mountain State Park property. Also J.B. Tate, who has been our go-to gentleman for years and years, is certainly one of the guys that were extremely instrumental in this project also. This house, this cabin, this cottage that was moved from a farm to this location was dismantled, put back together. It's called a dog trot. Some people call it a possum trot. Some people call it a breezeway home. There's just a lot of information that you could go to online. Just hit Google, find out anything you want to know about a dog trot cottage. But Guy's the expert today on this, and we're going to talk to Guy and let him give you a little bit of updated history on what is happening at Red Top Mountain. And that is a perfect example of co-partnership. Etowah Valley Historical Society and Red Top Mountain State Park Corps of Engineers worked together, made a project happen, and it's to your benefit, my benefit. Is fantastic thing that has happened here in Bartow County. Guy?
Thank you. Yes, this project with the cabin started back in April 1993, and it basically was a phone call from Sherlin Vaughn, who was the donor of the cabin, and he was trying to find a home for this particular structure. He was going to sell the land, approximately 160 acres, and he thought that house would be torn down. Now, I say house because if you were to look at it at the time, it did look like one of the old country houses that you would see on any road in Bartow County. And it was really run down in bad shape. However, he told us there was a log cabin within that house. And so what could we help him do with that particular structure? Could we save it in some way? Did we have somewhere it could go? I remembered after he called that J.B. Tate, who's president of the society at the time, and I was chairman of the board, he had been doing volunteer work or paid work with the elder hostel groups that were meeting up at Red Top Mountain State Park. So I called J.B., and I just happened to know he was going to teach that night. So I said, when you go up there, and I mentioned the cabin, I said, would you ask management if they would be interested in that cabin? So he did, called me back the next morning. He said, well, they thought about having one for a number of years, but it wasn't in the budget right now, so they would have to pass. So in my usual way, I procrastinated on calling Mr. Vaughn back. So about a week later, sure enough, out to Journo with Red Top Mountain State Park, I believe the assistant superintendent, he called and he said, is that cabin still available? And I said, I think it is. So he said, we're interested now. So he and Billy Hampson, who was the site manager up here, went out and take a look at it. They liked it, and so I'd like to say the rest is history, but it's not. So I called the owner, and Mr. Vaughn, and he said, great. Happy to do anything I can to show it to you or whatever. So next thing we did is we agreed to take it over, and then later on, probably into the summer of '93, we had a meeting up at Red Top with the Corps of Engineers, the DNR officials from Atlanta and from Red Top, officials from New Echota, who were very experienced in cabins up there, and then Etowah Valley Historical Society members, J.B. Tate and myself. So, and Mr. Vaughn, of course, and his wife Marie. They went over pretty much everything that needed to happen. They talked about they needed to pick a site for it, which they had already looked at. The Also, they talked about some of the things that might have to happen, but now one of the fellas in the Atlanta crowd, he said, well, now, you know, if you're gonna get this cabin, it's gonna have to go through legal at the state, so that may take 3 to 6 months to get that process done. So I looked at JB and I said, I know how to handle this, and we'll take care of all that. So we'll just have him donate the cabin to the Etowah Valley Historical Society. We'll do all the work for insurance, ensure his lot was cleaned off when the house was moved, also an appraisal, and also all the legal documentation for that donation. So went to several members. Keith Taylor did the appraisal. Warren Aiken did the legal work. The commissioner did the guarantee to fix the site. So I had all that down within probably 10 days. So I turned it all in, and so they could go ahead. So by end of into September, October, they started doing the dismantling of the cabin. And so it took up through December to really take it apart. Of course, the folks from New Echota came down, they numbered all the logs when they were coming out, and then it all went into storage for hopefully the spring of next year. However, that didn't happen. There were a lot of boards that needed to be, and logs, a few logs that needed to be replaced. Number of boards, the flooring was rotting, the subfloor, so all that had to be recut. And so basically, it took another 4 years before we got this whole project completed. So it was a long time, but Etowah Valley Historical Society did do a documentary on it under the old Crossroads program we had with local Channel 4 when it still existed. And that's still out there, and that should be up for the new year on our website. So you can watch the whole dismantling and part of the erection of the new cabin. And so unfortunately the Channel 4 closed down before we could do a second show to show it being put together back up here. So we never had that opportunity.
Hello again. I'm going to show you a few pieces of the furnishings that are in this cabin and tell you just a tad about them. Most of these items are have of course been donated by different families, and we're actually trying to trace some of that down, and I have caught a couple of people that know where these particular items have come from. The bedding here is a rope bed, and if you don't know what a rope bed is, it literally is held together not by box springs, but it's held together with rope. And if you have a heavy person on this bed, it starts sagging, you start pulling the ropes will get tighter, and that's the way they would deal with a rope bed. A lot of times they would also have the kids' bed, a small bed that would slide up under here. Matter of fact, here it is. Here's a little child's bed that will pull out at night, but you push it back up under here during the daytime. This mattress is actually what they call ticking. Ticking fabric is a heavy-duty fabric that would hold down feathers, or in this case, let me show you what's in here. I can show you real quick what's in this is what they used. They would use hay, they would use straw, they would use feathers, preferably, if they had that, and that's what the mattress and pillow structures were made out of for your bedding. And of course, anyone these days and before knows about the quilt. These are hand-done quilts. That's what, that was a project of the wife or older children in the home to start making quilts, not for decoration like we use them today, but for the warmth and the ability to keep you warm and cuddle during cold, cold winters. This piece over here is a loom. I don't know a lot about the history of this particular one, but Red Top, I think, has got some documentation on this and where it came from. This is a piece actually that belongs to me that my great-great-grandmother did, and it would have been made on a loom like this. She was almost totally blind, but made this beautiful fabric on a loom like this. Here again, it was, they would sometimes dye the fabric, dye the wool, dye whatever, and then make the yarn out of the cotton fabrics, and this is called a weaving loom. Little very, very primitive tables. Little tables like this could be used and taken anywhere, inside, outside, hunting, when the guys brought their birds or ducks or rabbits or squirrels home for dinner. They could move this little table right out in the breezeway or out on the porch and make a functional piece of furniture. Right, a staple, really, in almost, I'm sure, every home. It was, you know, the traveling salesman would go by, and this would be a phenomenal piece that the women would daily use. There are other pieces, of course. You know, you've got to have your pieces for your fireplace, because the fireplace had to be functional all the time. You know, you've got your pokers and your brooms and log movers, and they were usually done by the blacksmith in the area. There again, sometimes when the log cabins were out in the country, they would be traveling salesmen that would come by selling this type of good, or you would travel into town maybe once a week, sometimes just once a month, to buy your goods that you needed for your cottage or your cabin. In a second, we'll go into the other room, and that will be the kitchen dining area. This is more living space, sleeping, and your living quarters right here. This very, very functional piece. Of course, you can tell exactly where it came from, and they just made a stool, very substantial stool as a tool. They could, you know, do a lot of projects with this. This thing is extremely heavy. There again, they made furniture that could have functionality also. Diane again, we've moved to a different location. I want to introduce you to Steve Hadley. He is the interpretive ranger now here at Red Top Mountain Park. He has been to Red Top. He was so good, they sent him to Etowah, they sent him to Pickett's Mill. He's been around, and now, thank goodness, he's come back to Red Top and is the present interpretive ranger here. And we wanted to speak a minute about how partnerships work. When you come together, you can get a lot more done. That's what happened here. Etowah Valley Historical Society got involved with this project. Red Top Mountain decided they wanted a cabin on the property, so partners came together. Events happened, as Guy will explain a little bit further in a moment. You know, a lot had to happen, and it ended up coming together, but it took about 5 years. So you're back.
I'm back.
You're back. What are the plans?
The cabin was here before I got here. The site manager at that time was James Hamilton. He worked with the EVHS. So it was here and installed and being used a little bit when I got here. But we've used it a lot more. We did bluegrass on the porch here for many, many years, and people loved it. And we're also done a lot of living history programs in here. You can see it's a great venue for that. A lot of park guests come up, just sit on the porch, sit in the rocking chairs. They walk around, and we're able to open it on some occasions. Most of the time it's closed just because we don't have staff, but when we do open it, people like to come in and they're amazed at how good it looks. Right now it's decorated for Christmas, so we had a Christmas event in here. We've had Christmas with Santa Claus in here for 8 years. This year we couldn't because of social distancing, but it's a great venue, and we really appreciate EVHS working with the parks to get it. It's a great amenity. People love it because there just aren't that many of these at any of the parks. It's a great historic feature.
That's exactly right. I was actually reading, I found a thesis that a UGA student had done actually back in the 1990s, and he had concentrated on several counties around the northwest or North Georgia, Bartow being one of them. And at that time, he stated that there were only 5 or 6 that he could actually locate in Bartow County. So we are extremely lucky to have this, to be able to open it to the public. Red Top doing events here. They do the iron pour, which is absolutely fascinating. It just falls into the time period of Etowah, you know, that time period of Cooper's Iron Works, the town of Etowah. This is a type structure that you might have seen around that time period. But anyway, we love the partnership.
We're being y'all's partners.
Just it's been an amazing journey, and it continues, and that's what we want. We're going to talk to Guy again, and he's going to give us a little bit more information about the structure and a few other things about the
The
cabin.
original cabin, as we found it, was located on the intersection of Vaughn Road and Vaughn Spur Road, right on the corner. That's a little north of Peoples Valley Road at the intersection with Grassdale Road. When you looked at it, I think I said before, it basically looks like an old rundown house you'd see anywhere in the county. The outside structure basically had 1x12 boards on top of the logs, so you couldn't tell it was logs. And then on top of the boards, you'd find the old shingle type siding that you would see attached to many of the old houses back in the early 1900s. The house also had an addition to it, a couple of additions out the back, and pretty much it extended through the dog trot area. It was closed in, and that was your passageway, your front door. You went straight on through back into the kitchen area. And when the Vaughns lived there, moved in 1940, 41 or so, I believe there was 5 boys, a girl, and the parents, 2 parents. So they were all living in these small rooms, which are simply around 13 feet by 14 feet, if I remember the earlier dimensions. And so you got 2 rooms like that. You also had a similar room with a kitchen, and it had a sizable fireplace with the built-in utensils to hold the pots and so forth. And so that's where the parents lived. Water source here basically was a spring, which was across Vaughn Road. So they wanted water, the boys had to go get it and bring it back over. It said later they put a pump into that spring, so it made it a little easier to get the water out. No bathrooms here at the time. Of course, you had your outhouse, and anytime you put the outhouse, you want to keep it away from draining back into your water source, so keep it in the right place. The house had also brick chimneys. If you see this cabin today, you'll see rock chimneys. Originally, we were going to go back with the brick. The brick is quite common here in Bartow County on old structures, especially even cabins, because we have a lot of red clay. You can actually make the bricks on your own, in your own property. There were a few brick manufacturers around, but I don't know how far that dates back. But a lot of them were just homemade, basically. And so there were 2 big chimneys originally, one on each side of the cabin, which we have now. And then there was one for the additions, so where the cooking was done. When we took the cabin down, basically they cleaned the brick, they did everything they could to save as many as possible, but evidently there weren't enough brick to put back, and some of them were in worse shape than they thought, and they couldn't find matching bricks, so they decided to go back with rock, which probably to most people that see a log cabin, they're going to think that's the common item for chimneys, but it probably would have been great to have the brick where you could interpret that. The ceilings in these rooms used to be about 15, 16 feet high. We wondered why, because typically cabins are shorter because you don't want to have to heat as much space. With those high ceilings, there was no loft in any of the rooms. So I have seen up at New Echota where basically they were lofts with a ladder so you could put beds up above, but there were none of that. We wondered if this was an old barn originally and they changed it over to a home, but we just really didn't know. Now, today, you look at the ceilings in this building, you'll see maybe 10-foot, 9 or 10-foot ceilings. They came down 3 or 4 feet on the height, and that's in both pens. The floors, of course, they're pretty much all new. We did have to replace some of the logs, a few of them. There was not many, but a few were in bad shape. It looks like today we cut a couple of doors in. I don't remember a door in either one of the pens. All the doors went into the dog trot area in the center of the building, but there was a door going into the kitchen area, and I was remembering it through the dog trot area, but there may have been one in this pen on the west side of the west side pen, I'll call it, of the structure. There is a door here now, and it may have been there. I don't remember. It's been so long. It's almost been 25 years now, I think, since we were involved in this project. But there was a lot of good things with this project, and I think it really turned out well.
Okay, here we are in the breezeway, and it is a little breezy today in the not quite the middle of winter, but it feels like it. We even had a few spits of snow on our way up here this morning. I want to ask Guy if he doesn't mind telling us about who it was that culminated and really put this project together, even financially, or it wouldn't have happened. If you don't mind reminding us how that came to be.
Well, you're right. Nothing's going to happen unless you can bring a lot of people together, and it takes manpower and you need money to do this project. I've mentioned before, Georgia Power is very instrumental, just like AT&T. Atlanta Gas offered a lot of help, but it was a lot of also donors, especially on the part of the Etowah Valley Historical Society and our participation that helped fund some of the extras for the construction of this cabin. And proud of a lot of our members stepping forward to help us, especially with the roof on this building, which it's a substantial cost. Yeah, it was non-existent because this was a tin roof originally. So we went back with shingles. It's not the cedar shakes, but it is the treated pine shingles that are very similar to the cedar shakes and should last a long, long, long time. So it's quite expensive, and let's say our members stepped forward and put the money in to make it happen. And we had a number of our members who participated out, especially with the foundation here. We have a block foundation, but we also put a dry stack of rock around them. And so we had several of us worked out here on a couple of days, putting those rock up and getting a lesson on how to do dry stack rock building, so to speak. And so we all learned a lot in participating in this project. And I'm just thankful to all the partners we did have doing it. And hopefully we have had other partnerships also since then with Red Top Mountain State Park. And so they've been a great partner for Etowah Valley Historical Society now for 25 years on the projects we do. We do a lot of things jointly, and we're grateful for their participation and allowing us to participate in their projects.